tonight, which will be the fascinating topic of financial aid. And again, I am joined by my esteemed colleague, the Director of Financial Aid, Michelle Kosboff. And my name is Tom Abeta. I'm the Director of Admissions here at Oberlin. And I'm also joined by my colleague, Sophie Mettler-Grove, and she is the Senior Assistant Director of Admissions, and she will be partially on the back end to kind of help us and to make sure that things are going through. Like I said earlier, that we will be utilizing the chat. And so if you want to be able to, if you have specific questions and if you want to begin to type those out, we're going to be addressing those throughout this session. And so first off, I just want to say welcome to everyone. And again, from Oberlin, I'm actually broadcasting from my office in Oberlin. And so if you don't know very much about Oberlin, let me just tell you a couple quick things here. First of all, we are a small liberal arts college nestled in the fabulous town of Oberlin, Ohio, which is located just 35 miles southwest of Cleveland. Like I said, the debates are happening. There's a bunch of buzz happening around Cleveland at Case Western Reserve University, and we are just a short drive. In fact, it's about 45-minute drive from Oberlin to downtown Cleveland. So what I love to talk about is the ideal location of Oberlin. It's a perfect place to be, especially in a time of a pandemic, where if you want to be located in a rural, kind of isolated area where you can focus in on your academics, but then yet you still have access to a larger city if you wanted to, you can definitely do that. Our student body is about 3,000 students, and it's about 2,200 students in the College of Arts and Sciences, and then about 600 students in our music conservatory. And so I say those two things because that's the one really big difference about us. If you're comparing us compared to any other small private institution, is that the fact that we have, a really great liberal arts college that shares a campus with the world-renowned music conservatory. And so of our students, it's a different application process where students are going through an audition process to become, really great vocalists or an instrumentalist or a composer. But then obviously on the side is that we're looking at a holistic review, and we'd love to have you on campus in the sense of if you want to study one of our 50 plus majors in the college, almost 40 different majors and programs in the conservatory, you can definitely do that either just as a college student, just as a conservatory student, or both with our double degree program. And again, we offer over 1,000 courses. Student to faculty ratio is overall 9-to-1 at Oberlin. And so we are a primarily undergraduate institution where if you want a rigorous academic setting where you'll get to know your faculty members and you'll be in classrooms of about 19 students, you'll be able to be surrounded by students that come from all 50 states, 40 different foreign countries. It's only about 6% of our population actually comes from the state of Ohio. And so while you're in that politics class, right, talking about debates, discussing issues, you'll be surrounded by students that come from large metropolitan cities like Boston or DC or San Francisco, LA, Chicago, or people that come from small rural towns, people that come from different kind of cultural backgrounds, different religious upbringings. I guarantee you it'll make your discussion that much more enriching. So if you want to be in a place where it's non-competitive in terms of student discussions, but it's academically intensive and surrounded by a diverse student body, Oberlin could possibly be a place for you. And so with that, I want to just kind of switch topics a little bit here, because in order to do that, right, we are a private institution. And nowadays, to go to a private school is very expensive, but how can it be affordable, right? And so I wanted to introduce and kind of turn it over to my colleague, Michelle Kosboff. And if this was a live audience, I'd say put your hands together and give her a big round of applause. So I know if you're cheering in your room or cheering in, at your kitchen table in the living room, then you can do that and yet give a hands up. Go ahead and take it away, Michelle.
All right, thank you, Tom. I am going to bring my presentation up here so that we can get going with that. Hopefully. Come on, there we go. All right, so I'm so glad to be talking to you guys, even if I can't see you or hear you. My name is Michelle Kosboff. I am the Director of Financial Aid here at Oberlin. I have been here just a year now. I have about almost 30 years of experience in financial aid, but I have just joined the Oberlin family within the last year, and it's a great place to be. I don't live in Oberlin like Tom. I live in Avon, Ohio, which is about 30 minutes away. And I was just listening to something go overhead, which I think may have been related to the candidates' debate. It sounded like a lot of airplane traffic. So I apologize if you hear anything in the background like that. I don't have control over the airspace. We are going to be talking about a variety of things today. We have how financial aid is going to work at Oberlin, how you can apply for aid, what your award package might look like, financing options, how we treat outside scholarships, and what to expect after your first year at Oberlin. So financial aid at Oberlin works, we have two different kinds of financial aid in terms of institutional funding. We have merit aid, which is based on your application for admission. And we have two different funds that we're going to be awarding to the incoming students in the fall of 21. We are just announced that we have the Oberlin Commitment Scholarship that's brand new for this incoming class. It will be $10,000 for every student who's admitted to the college or conservatory. So that will be offered to everyone, international students, domestic students, everyone who is an admitted student, a first-year application to the college or the conservatory. We also have the John F. Oberlin Scholarship, which is a long-standing merit scholarship at Oberlin. And for students who are applicants for admission to the college, you'll be considered for that scholarship as well. So you'll definitely all be offered $10,000 if you're admitted to the college, and then you may also receive merit-based John F. Oberlin Scholarship funds in addition to that. We also offer institutional financial aid based on financial need for assistance. In order to apply for financial need, you will need to do the CSS profile form. You don't need to do any application for the merit aid other than apply for admission, but for need-based aid, we will require students to complete the profile form. We do meet 100% of a student's demonstrated financial need as determined from the information provided on the profile. And we will also, for students seeking federal financial aid, you'll need to complete the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. We are going to also, as part of the profile form, if you have parents who are divorced or do not live together, look for non-custodial information from the non-custodial parent, and that's part of the CSS profile application process. There are opportunities to waive that information, though, if the circumstances warrant it. Applications and required deadlines. So for first-year domestic and Canadian students, we have a couple of different deadlines. If you are going to be, well, first of all, the CSS profile form is open right now. The deadline or the opening date for the FAFSA is on October 1st. And our deadlines for completing those documents, it depends a lot on what type of application for admission you're going to be doing. If you plan on being an early decision student, we have an early decision deadline for ED1 of November 15th. And then we have a second round of early decision, and that deadline is January. Tom, help me out. What's our deadline? Sorry, I totally linked on what our deadline for
early decision 1 is November 15th. Early decision 2 is January 2nd, and regular decision is
right. Okay, regular decision. I got that. January 15th is the regular decision deadline. You want to make sure that depending on what your application is like, you meet those deadlines. You need to apply for need-based financial aid before you are admitted to the college. So depending on which cycle of admission you might be interested in entering, you want to make sure you meet those deadlines for your financial aid as well. The free application for federal student aid is available on October 1st to start the application process. Again, the same deadlines apply for the FAFSA as to the CSS profile form. We will ask you to eventually send in copies of your tax returns and W-2 forms. The FAFSA and the CSS profile form look back 2 years in terms of income information. So you're going to be putting your 2019 financial information on both of those forms. We'll ask you to provide copies of the federal 1040 forms as well as your W-2 forms. If you are an international student, we will ask for a copy of a tax return if you file one in your country or other documentation of your income. Okay, so early decision applicants. Again, early decision 1 is November 15th. Early decision 2 is January 2nd. For those of you who may not be familiar with the early decision process, it is binding, which means if you apply during either the early decision cycles and you get admitted, you are committing to attending Oberlin. So it's important if you think you want financial aid to make sure you apply for financial aid prior to being admitted to the college so that you understand what your financial aid looks like in addition to getting the admission application or admission decision. International applicants, again, our international applicants will be awarded that $10,000 Oberlin Commitment Scholarship if they're admitted to the college. We do require the CSS profile form for any international applicant who is interested in need-based financial aid, and that is available through the College Board. And there's a special supplement that we also ask for, the certification of finances. So once those 2 documents are received, then we would consider you an applicant for need-based financial aid. Again, we will follow up asking for potentially some tax documentation or income documentation to support what you've put down on the profile form. We don't ask students to complete the CSS profile form after the first year. It's just in the first year that we ask for that, but you will be asked to complete, not international students, but any student that's applying for, any domestic student that's applying for need-based aid, we will ask for the FAFSA each year. So I want to define what financial need means a little bit for you. In the first year, so your first year cost of attendance, we're going to take that and we're going to subtract from that the expected family contribution. Now, the expected family contribution is the number that the CSS profile form and the FAFSA produce that represents what you as a family can contribute to 1 year's worth of educational expenses based on the income and asset information you provided on those documents. For institutional need-based grant aid, we are going to look at the CSS profile and we're going to take that family contribution from the profile, subtract it from our cost of attendance, and the difference is your financial need for assistance. So this is our cost of attendance for 1 year of education right now. Our tuition and fees are $58,554. Room and board for living on campus and our most expensive dining option is $17,334. We also build into our cost of attendance indirect costs, so things that are not billed directly by Oberlin, but you still have to potentially pay for, such as books and supplies, personal expenses, and travel expenses. So not including travel, because that one is hard to, it varies by location. Our cost of attendance for 1 year right now is $77,796. If your family contribution was $10,000, I'll go back a minute, then you would have financial need for $67,796. And we would then meet that need with financial aid from all resources that you are eligible to receive aid from. So that would include our $10,000 Oberlin Commitment Scholarship, any other merit aid that you're offered by the admissions office. It would also include potentially the FAFSA. If you're a domestic student and you qualify for federal aid, we're going to offer you this Stafford loan of $5,500. If you're Pell eligible, we'll include that. We'll also give you some federal work study funding, and then we'll fill the balance with institutional grant aid. To define the family contribution a little bit more, that is made up of two parts: the parental contribution, which is calculated from the parent's income and asset information, and then the student contribution. Now, students may have no income at all, but we do operate from the perspective that students should have to contribute to their educational costs on some level. So we assume a contribution from students of $2,700, regardless of what your income is. We start at $2,700. Your contribution from student income could be higher than that if your income is higher than that, but we will start at $2,700 as an expectation of a student contribution. Federal financial aid eligibility is determined from the results of the FAFSA. So the FAFSA is also calculating an EFC, which may or may not be the same as the CSS profile form. But we use the FAFSA EFC to determine your eligibility for federal aid, such as the Pell Grant, the Stafford loans, and work study. And our institutional aid is based on the CSS profile information. Because we meet 100% of your need as determined by the CSS profile form, we're first going to fill that need with any merit aid that you're offered. And then we're going to fill the rest of your remaining need with a combination of federal aid and institutional need-based grant. International students don't qualify for the federal aid, but you could see a combination of an institutional loan and an Oberlin Work Study Award, along with any need-based grant that you're eligible for and merit aid that you're eligible for. After all of that, if you still owe a balance to the college, because say the CSS profile says you can afford to pay $10,000 to the college, you can pay that outright. You're billed twice a year, once a semester, for your charges each semester. And you could just pay that through the student accounts office with a credit card or other forms of payment, wire transfer, that kind of thing. If you need to finance your out-of-pocket expenses, there are a variety of loans that you can choose from that go beyond the Stafford loan. There's the Federal Plus loan for domestic students who qualify. That's a parent loan. There are private educational loans that can be borrowed by either students or parents, and some of those are available to international students if the international student has a U.S. citizen as a cosigner. So, and then we have a monthly payment plan here at Oberlin. It functions on a semester by semester basis, and each semester there's 4 payments per semester, and there's a $40 per semester fee when you take advantage of that payment plan. And you can combine all of those different options to meet the needs of any family. So if the family wants to do some student loans, some private loans, and then finance some through the payment plan, you can do that. There's a lot of flexibility with how you can pay your bill. Outside scholarships. If you do get outside scholarships and that scholarship is based totally or in part on merit, it will not affect the aid from Oberlin resources. So we won't take away any money we've offered you when you bring in an outside scholarship. If you do get scholarships based on financial need, we will start by reducing that out-of-pocket expense, that expected student contribution that we have in place, that $2,700. We'll put that outside scholarship toward that before we take away any grant funding that we've offered you. If you get tuition benefits from students or parents, employers, They don't decrease merit aid, but it will decrease need-based grant aid dollar for dollar. So if you get $30,000 in merit aid and $20,000 in a need-based grant, and you have an employer benefit from either another college or from your parent's employer, and that equals tuition, for example, if it's $54,000, we're going to have to replace the $20,000 in need-based grant with that employer benefit. So we are located in the Carnegie Building on campus, on the first floor. As you enter the building, we're on the left. We are staffed. We have a limited staff in the office on any given day of the week, except for weekends. But we are happy to communicate with you in a variety of ways, including email and phone. So I encourage you to be in contact with us so that if you have questions as you go through the application process, or once you've gotten your financial aid award, if you have questions about what the award means or how you can go about financing any out-of-pocket expense, we're happy to talk with you. We're here to help, and we really want to hear from you. And that is the end of my presentation, but I'm sure we have questions. Hey, Tom. You're muted, Tom, in case you wanted to know that.
I know we do have several questions that have come in. I know, thank you, Sophie, for answering some immediately. And then we do have a couple in here. And so this first one is, as long as we meet the college's deadline, is there any benefit to filing sooner than later?
No, because we're going to award you if you are admitted to the college, and it's all going to be one packet. So it doesn't really give you any advantage to file on the very first day or the last day, other than we prefer you file early enough so that we have time to put together all the financial aid packages and make sure we get them all over to admissions to be matched up with the admission packet. But there is no early bird special, no.
That is something now, though, that starting October 1, I know the CSS profile as well as the FAFSA will be available. And so families can go in and, get a login. You can partially fill it out if you need more time. I know that a lot of times it can be difficult just to try to say, like, well, what information do I need to gather prior to filling all this stuff out? And I know that Michelle had mentioned, prior in terms of, so what you're doing is you're using the 2019 year to qualify for financial aid for the 2021-22 year, right? And so it's actually 2 years old. And in fact, that's a good segue into another question here that was, what if our financial situation has changed, right, due to COVID, and then meaning that the 2020 year will look a lot different than 2019.
Yeah, and I should have put that in my presentation. I will make a note to add that. Yes, we do want to hear from you if you've had a change in circumstance. So you still need to do the application based on the 2019 income information. But what you want to do after that, and this is probably true of every college you might be looking at, you want to let us know that there's been a change in circumstance and that 2020 looks very different from 2019. We have a request for review form. When we hear from a family that has had a change in circumstance, we will send that to them. And then we would like you to not only give us your 2019 tax information, but when your 2020 taxes are available, we want to send those to us as well. So you want to make sure that you stay in touch with us and give us as much information as you can regarding the change in circumstance so we can take a look at that. And that's true of any given year. It's not just true because there's a pandemic going on. So if you enroll at Oberlin next fall and then, 2 years into your time at Oberlin, there's a loss of income or a divorce or any change in circumstance, we want to hear from you, because we will make changes to the financial aid package based on those changes when we're notified of them.
I know it could always be intimidating, to kind of, first of all, just talk to someone about your finances. But Michelle and her staff are friendly, they're open, they want to be able to talk. That's the great thing about being, a little bit smaller of an institution, is that we are personalized, right? Is that we're not going to transfer you to this department and that department, is that we really want to be able to provide kind of that personalized customer service to you, because we know that, gosh, if Oberlin really is the right place for you, then we really want to try to make it within our awarding policies and guidelines to really make it affordable for all families.
Yeah. Somebody just asked, how soon after you file the forms should you reach out about a change? If that change has already taken place, you can reach out as soon as you file the FAFSA and the CSS profile. We don't need you to wait any particular amount of time. The sooner we know about it, the better. So, we can take it into consideration as we're doing the awarding. But if it happens after you've received your application, your admission acceptance, and your financial aid packet, any time is fine. So there's no rule about it. Just get it to us when it's available.
So Michelle, there's another question in here about calculating kind of EFC and need-based aid. It says here, I know that schools will often consider older siblings in college, like when there's if there are two or more in college, but does Oberlin consider younger siblings in private high schools as well? And what their financial aid package to that private high school is? And so how is that considered? Because we know that that's a pretty common situation where we have a lot of families that are paying for a private school education as a secondary school. So how does that come into play?
So the profile does actually have a place where you can indicate that you pay for high school or elementary school private education. And there's also sort of a dialogue box on there where you can indicate, you can sort of freeform write information in there. I always encourage families to tell us things in that box that they don't necessarily feel like is represented anywhere else on the document. So if there's no question on the profile that really allows you to answer about a specific circumstance in your life, you can always put it in that freeform box and let us know about it. But we do take it into consideration. It is part of it. We will calculate it into the formula when we know about it.
I know there's a couple questions in here about scholarships, which I can address here. And first of all, just the range. What's the range of an Oberlin scholarship, merit scholarship? And again, so it can be anywhere from a few $1,000s upwards to, it could be 33, 35-ish, it depends. I know that there's merit scholarships on the side of the College of Arts and Sciences, and then there's dean scholarships, which are like talent scholarships on the side of the conservatory. So for those of you that are looking for a conservatory style of education, then based upon your audition, right, and your talent level, you can earn a dean scholarship there. Like Michelle had said, what we are initiating this year, this commitment scholarship, is that it's a $10,000 guaranteed scholarship for anyone that is admitted, right? And so, again, we're confident enough in the selection process that those students that we are admitting, we know that they are strong, great academic students, and as well as those to the conservatory. So we just want to make that one step easier in terms of the forwarding side, is at least to know that that's $10,000 guaranteed. You may earn additional scholarship on top of that. And how do we do that? And so for the College of Arts and Sciences, with your application, we will evaluate you for a merit scholarship, right? And so based upon your overall academic performance, and so we're looking at, we'll probably spend most of the time on your transcript, looking at your overall GPA, the curriculum that's offered at your school, how you took advantage of that curriculum. We're going to look at your teacher recommendations. And now Oberlin, for this year, we are test optional. In fact, it's this year as well as the next 2 years. And so for the next 3 cycles, we're going to be test optional, and so that we can do a study, and then we'll make a decision whether or not to continue on with that. And so again, if you don't submit test scores, then it's not going to hurt you. You're still going to be considered for merit scholarships. We'll use the information that we do have, in hand, right? In terms of your overall academic performance based upon your transcript, the rigor of your curriculum, and your teacher recommendations. And then if you do submit test scores, then we'll also consider those in. But if you don't, it's not going to hurt you, right? It's not going to hinder you. We have enough expertise within our staff to really make sure that we are making wise decisions in terms of who we admit. And then there was another question in here about Raise Me scholarships.
Yeah.
Oberlin is a partner with Raise Me. And so what it is, they're micro scholarships. So based upon different activities that you have participated in or different events throughout your high school career, if you go to Raise Me, I think it's raiseme.com or raiseme.org, but if you can just put raise, like RAISE, me, you can Google it, and you can go there and you can add Oberlin as a school. But what you need to do is that there's a deadline, and that's coming up here pretty soon. Mm-hmm. And so for you, what you can do is you can go in, and for every like A grade that you get in certain courses, or if you have leadership in certain organizations, if you've done certain things, then you can, it's guaranteed scholarship that you would earn as a Raise Me scholarship. So we definitely participate in that. It's a program that we use to try to incentivize just a great wise choices throughout your high school career. Mm-hmm. So it's designed for those students to start early in 9th grade and to continue on. You can see what type of scholarship that you can earn to Oberlin if you're admitted, right? And then to any other participating schools in the Raise Me scholarship program.
So I see another question here about on one of my slides I referenced SEOG. SEOG is a federal grant program from the Department of Education. It's called the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, and we offer it mostly to students who are Pell eligible. The college gets a lump sum from the Department of Education, and then we award it to students who have high need. So most Pell eligible students will see SEOG in their financial aid package. It is a grant. It does not need to be repaid. It is only available, though, to students who qualify for federal financial aid. Someone else is asking about discussing a bit further how the tuition benefit from an employer affects any other college offers or aid offers. So again, if you get an employer benefit, a tuition benefit that comes to the college your student is attending, we won't touch merit financial aid. So anything that $10,000 commitment scholarship or JFO scholarship, we won't change those. But if you're getting a need-based grant from the college, the Oberlin grant, we might have to replace the Oberlin grant with that tuition benefit. It depends on how much the benefit is and how much financial aid you're receiving. So some families are surprised when we do that, but we're very clear that because you're bringing in, usually they're a significant amount of money. So they tend to replace a smaller institutional grant when we get it. But we do have to replace the need-based grant. And sometimes we have to change a student's subsidized Stafford loan to unsubsidized Stafford loan, depending on how much money is involved. At what point in the application process do we hear about the financial aid package? So if your financial aid application is complete and we are able to review it prior to you being admitted, we're going to send your financial aid letter in your admission packet. So it should come simultaneously. If you apply later than you are admitted to the college, or if you are not, if it's not complete, then we may not be able to award you as you're being admitted, but we try to complete everybody because we want everybody to get a financial aid package at the time that they're admitted. I don't know if you want to say anything more about that, Tom.
Well, again, and this is your exact financial aid package, right? There's obviously tools that it's federally mandated, right, for every college and university to have a net price calculator on their website, right? So you can also get estimates, based upon, some are very, very accurate and some are a lot more kind of ballparkish range. In fact, we have two separate calculators on our website, and I know that we do have the My Intuition, which is basically 6 questions that will, and it'll give you a range in terms of the what you can expect in need-based aid. And then we do have a net price calculator as well, which is a little bit more detailed in terms of the type of information that you would need to put in there. And then that would also give you an idea of how much financial aid you would qualify for. Now neither one, is that right? In terms of estimating merit aid, neither one estimates merit aid at all.
No. And what My Intuition does, it's not telling you what your aid package will look like. It's going to give you a range of your out-of-pocket expense. So it's kind of approaching it from, if Oberlin costs this much based on the information you provided, you could expect to pay somewhere between X and Y in terms of out-of-pocket expense. The net price calculator will do a little bit more in terms of giving you actual award figures. Like, it'll tell you that you're eligible for the Pell Grant. If that's the case, it will tell you that we package $2,400 in student employment and $5,500 in Stafford loan. And then it'll tell you how much you might be looking at in terms of need-based grant. Neither of those give you an estimate of the merit scholarship outside of the $10,000 commitment scholarship, which is a given for anybody who's admitted. And someone is asking, related to this question, if it's possible to get a merit scholarship and a dean scholarship if you're applying double degree. So what happens is, yes, it is possible. You would get offered a dean scholarship from the conservatory and a JFO, some form of a JFO scholarship from the college. You will only get one commitment scholarship, though. So you'll get $10,000 that will show up on your financial aid award as a commitment scholarship, and then you might get a dean scholarship and a JFO in addition to that $10,000, depending on how fantastic you are and how much Oberlin wants you to come play at their conservatory and be a student at the college. So,
can I talk just a little bit about?
Sure.
So here's what's going to happen is that you're going to apply to, 10 schools. You're going to get admitted to 7, right, around that, and then you're going to get all those acceptance letters. Along with that, you're going to get financial aid packages, and that's where, as a family, that you guys could sit down and really compare packages, compare apples to apples. And again, there's a difference, obviously, between a private institution and maybe kind of a large state institution. But there may be changes that may have happened, that you may need to talk and say, well, is there a way that, and I know this is what you guys gave me, but gosh, this really isn't going to work for my family. Is there a way that we can can you make an adjustment? And I'm not advising in a sense that that's what you need to do, but because I don't want everyone on this. And I know there's around, just over a couple dozen people on this call. But again, but it is something, like I said, that being an institution that is smaller, that prides itself on personal kind of customer service, if there are issues that you need to discuss and you need to talk, then we're willing and open, that we want to make sure that we can talk with you. And that's where it really comes down to it, is that, gosh, I know Oberlin's my number one choice. That's where I want to be. But gosh, I got into all these other schools and I got into Oberlin, and I'm trying to figure out what's going to be the best for our family as a decision going forward. And is there some help and guidance that you can, that I can seek out to the financial aid office or the admissions office to try to work out a way to make Oberlin affordable? We're at least open to the conversation. Now, I don't want to say we can't guarantee that we're going to make a change for every person that reaches out. But if there is justification for an adjustment, then we want to make sure that we can do that.
There was a question asking me to clarify the student contribution, the expected contribution from the student. So as I said, we do build into our financial aid process the expectation that a student will be able to contribute $2,700 to their educational costs per year. How a student pays that is really kind of up to the student and the family. So a student may be working over the summer and may be able to save that money and be able to pay that toward their education. Students may be able to work while they're a student on campus and use those funds to help pay for their cost of attendance. Students can borrow to cover that, or the family can borrow to cover that if they would like to. It's really wide open as far as how a student pays that $2,700. It's not a specific line item on your bill, though. It's just that we build into our awarding process an expectation of $2,700 family contribution from the student. And then whatever else the parents may be contributing to the student's education as well, based on the profile and the FAFSA information. So it's really something that can be paid a variety of ways. But if it's going to be part of the whole amount that you owe to the college each semester. I hope that helped. I'm not sure.
Well, that's each academic year, right? So that's the 2,700.
Yeah, 2,700 per year. So yeah.
Yeah, and again, in some other places, we'll call it like summer work contribution or expectation.
Yep.
Right? So the idea is that, over the summer, if you're going to get that great internship that Oberlin will help you with in terms of connecting you through our career development center. You can get a great internship where you're gaining experience, but you can also get paid for that. And then as a result, you can use that fund, toward your overall budget. Right.
So somebody asked, how do international students usually pay the indirect cost you mentioned on the slides? And does the college cover personal expenses? So the answer is kind of the same whether you're an international student or a domestic student. You have certain expenses that you're going to incur just by going to college. You're going to need to pay for books and supplies. You're going to need to buy toilet papers or toothpaste, any of those personal expenses that we all have to sort of pay for and expect to have to cover in our lives. If you have enough financial aid, and that includes loans, that you have a credit balance on your student account, you can use that credit balance to pay for these other expenses. If you only get enough financial aid to cover what your financial need is, and you still have, say, a $20,000 parent contribution or family contribution that you need to cover, some of that's going to have to be paid to the college for direct expenses, and then you're still going to have to figure out how to pay for other expenses. The bookstore is where students buy their books and supplies for the most part, although some students, I think, probably order them online so that they can save some money. It's really, again, up to the family how they want to plan for their students to have to pay for expenses that are indirect and outside of what this college bills the student directly. Some students work on campus so that they can pay for those things. It's really, again, kind of a family preference. And I really encourage you to plan ahead for these things because if you're sending your student to college, and if you're an international student, you're sending them, around the world to come here to go to school. So you want to plan ahead for how that student will have access to funding, whether that's you set up a bank account within Oberlin so that you can, because Oberlin has banks right in town, you can set up an account with those so that students you can deposit money for them, or when they work and they get a paycheck, they have someplace to put that paycheck. But it really I encourage families to have these conversations now and start planning ahead. Students are working during high school. They should be saving some of that money for these expenses for when they go to school. Tom, there's another question about what kind of weight do the letters of recommendation have on a financial aid? From a need-based financial aid perspective, they have no weight at all. I don't even see them. But for the merit side of things, I'm not sure.
So again, that's part of our holistic review in terms of how we look at merit scholarships. And so we are looking at teacher recommendations, transcript, rigor of curriculum, your overall GPA, test scores if you submit them, right? But again, so we're looking at all those things holistically. And so with that, we are kind of assessing, your academic performance. And so with that helps us to determine merit scholarship amounts. And so it's hard to say like, yes, if, that doesn't mean that you want to send in 20 letters of recommendation, right? And so within the common application, as well as the coalition application that we take, and we also take the QuestBridge application, right? And so with those, it's typically, 2 teacher recommendations, 2 academic teacher recommendations that we'll be looking at. And then there's a question here in terms of the range of cost listed on Naviance and Niche. Is it accurate? And so I guess I might need some clarifying thing. I would imagine that on Naviance as well as Niche, they are saying, here's how much like the average person costs, or, I'm unsure if they're listing an average cost or if they're listing, what the average award is. There's a couple different things that some of these aggregator sites, right, they pull from something called iPads, which is information that is typically could be anywhere from 2 to 3 years old. Mm-hmm. And so they're looking at federal kind of data that colleges are required to report, right? And so they're pulling this down, and then that's where you can see like the admit rate and how much it costs and that kind of stuff. And so I would say for the most accurate information in terms of costs, you should go directly to individual websites for a school. Like for us, like we have listed, even in this presentation tonight, here's what the cost of tuition is, here's what the cost of room and board is. And so you can get that. And then I think, other than that, obviously, once you fill out your financial aid and depending on what you would get awarded, and then, that will be it. But what some of these sites are doing is that they're pulling readily available data, right, that all colleges and institutions report, and then from there they're pulling it. And so, some of the data could, like I said, could be anywhere from 2 to 3 years old.
So this last question that we have regarding early decision. So we do not provide estimates ahead of you applying for early decision. You need to get your application materials for financial aid in at the same time that you're getting your admission application materials in. And you will get the 2 things together, an acceptance packet and your financial aid award together. If you are concerned about what the financial aid is going to look like, and that may, determine whether or not you could afford to attend Oberlin or any college early decision, I recommend using the net price calculator and my intuition to get a good sense of what your out-of-pocket expense will look like and how much aid you might qualify for. Neither of those are guarantees of anything. They are estimates, and they're only as good as the information that you put into them. But that being said, if you are concerned about being able to afford the college and you don't want to get locked into early decision, you need to consider that. I don't know what advice you have for students, Tom, who are considering early decision but are concerned about financial aid, what your recommendation is from the admission side of things.
Yeah, and so Oberlin, like many other schools that are early decision, right, there's a couple different options to apply, right? Some have early action, which is non-binding, For us, early decision is a binding agreement. And so there is, so along with that, when you fill out the common application, you fill out a early decision agreement, which basically says that I understand this is a binding agreement, and if you admit me, I am committing to enroll, right? There is a clause in there in that statement that says, you know, as long as the financial aid package, right, is adequate, right? And so again, that's kind of a gray area, right? It's left up to interpretation there of what does that really mean? Obviously, we would want families to go into the early decision process, eyes wide open, to be able to use and take advantage of the net price calculator and really estimate out, because that should give you a pretty good idea of how much aid I'll qualify for, approximately how much is it going to be for me, my out-of-pocket expenses. And so, you know, we want to work with families on that too. Not that there have been families that have applied for early decision and that either said, hey, you know what, I think it's going to help me to get in if I apply early decision, and it'll also help me if I choose not to apply for financial aid, right? And so you're thinking that Oberlin, like many other institutions, we are need sensitive, meaning that we are going to look at a family's financial situation to help us in determining how many spots we have left, right? And so just to kind of, if we have 100 spots and yet there are 200 people that apply, but 100 of them all need full aid, if we can't afford to pay all to provide all that aid for the 100, because we do meet 100% of demonstrated need, right? There are a lot of other places that will admit, but then they won't give you all the aid that you need to come, right? And so for us, it's a matter of balancing that out. And so we want to make sure that everyone that we admit is that we're going to be able to provide the financial aid necessary for them to afford and to enroll at Oberlin. And so because we're need sensitive, right, we're looking at that. And so first on some people, they say, well, if I don't apply for financial aid, then that would give me the best chances. And they try to want to do the sneak around to then say, then once I get admitted, then I'll apply for financial aid afterward. Where that's not exactly how it works. If we want you to be right up front, if you think you're going to qualify for need-based aid, then you need to apply for financial aid right off. Right from the very beginning, so that we can make sure that we can provide you with that. You can always live with just being truthful and honest and open, and we want to also make sure that we can provide and give you the aid within our awarding policy that we can. Like I said, we're committed to making Oberlin affordable, and I know that sometimes with some of these calculations, there tends to be a difference between what the forms say that we can afford and what and what we think we can afford, right? And so I know there's a gap there that exists, and it's a real one. And with the cost of a private education, we know that we want to be able to meet those needs, but it just doesn't work for everyone. And so I know that's part of the process too. So we do want to be upfront about things, that a private education is an expensive one, but we believe that it's one well worth it, and that the value that you would get from a community that's dedicated to your learning, where you're gonna know professors' names, they're gonna know you. Just the rates in terms of 90% of our students, over 90% that apply to medical schools get into medical schools. Similar with law schools, there's just really great rates in terms of where our students end up going with the quality of education they receive, but it comes at a cost, right? And so that's why each individual family needs to kind of sit down, talk about it, be open and honest between the students and the parents, right? This is time not to hold back and really kind of say, what can we afford? What are the expectations? And how can we move forward with making sure that we're giving all the information necessary to the institution to make the most accurate decisions when it comes to awarding need-based and then also even merit-based aid too.
So we have about just a few minutes left. I didn't know if there were any other questions that people didn't ask or would like to ask before we end. Again, please, I'm both Tom and Sophie have that presentation. If anybody would like a copy of that presentation, I think you can just let them know, and I'm happy to let them email that to any of our students and parents who attended this today. And please reach out to our office if you have any questions about the financial aid process. Financial.aid@oberlin.edu is our email address. That's probably the most efficient way to get a hold of us these days. But if you do call us, we will be happy to talk to you as well.
I do want to remind people, though, too, and it was one of the questions that was answered, this session is being recorded, and so all of our Tuesday talks will be available online. It may take us about a week or two to kind of get them up there, but we're trying to work as fast as possible to make sure all these resources are available to anyone. And so you can go in and you can watch at your leisure to continue to do that. I do want to give a plug out there. If there there are plenty of virtual resources online. So if you want to go on there, if you haven't already attended a fair, or an information session, there are, a lot of videos out there. There are, picture galleries. And so if you want to see what's the inside of a dorm room and what's happening on campus, there's some YouTube video lists out there. And so there's a bunch of different things that are on our website that I would highly encourage you that, during this time, of COVID and in the pandemic, I know travel has been restricted a lot, and people just haven't been able to come out and visit campus. And so there's plenty of ways to kind of get to know our community, to get to know a little bit more about our academics, and then and even just learn about what's the vibe of the Oberlin campus. And so I would encourage you to spend a little bit of time if you can just Google Oberlin campus visit, and it'll send you to our site, which will have more than enough materials on there for you to spend plenty of time. We are just about 45 seconds away from our official ending. I don't know if you had any other words of wisdom or parting thoughts, Michelle.
If you have a question, ask it. Just stay in touch with us, ask the questions. It's really hard for us to know what you need if you don't tell us. So I highly recommend staying in touch with our office, the admissions office, throughout the process.
Great. I do encourage, please join us again next week. Every Tuesday we'll have different talks. I know the talk next week will be one on geared toward those families that will have the first in their family to go to college. And so we'll hopefully see you next week.
Bye.